Night Falls on Manhattan marks Sidney Lumet's 29th film to be shot on location in New York City. It also returns the four-time Oscar-nominated director to the subject of cops and corruption, themes explored in his films like Serpico, Q&A, and Prince of the City. Actor Andy Garcia plays the young attorney at the center of this story. The Academy Award-nominated actor is often noted for the intensity he brings to his films. He also received widespread recognition for his roles in films like The Untouchables, Internal Affairs, and The Godfather Part 3. Joining me now, Sidney Lumet and Andy Garcia. Welcome.
Thank you for that introduction. That was a good introduction.
You like that?
Yes.
I can take no credit for that one, unfortunately. I saw this film last night. Tell me, before we talk about it, in a sense, what was it in your head that you wanted to do? Why were you driven to this subject and this film and its themes?
Well, you know, so many of the so-called cop movies, Charlie, that I've done, I wanted to wind up with one that really reflected even more so how I felt about it, because over the years of dealing with the police, even though the pictures are very often about the corruption and so on, my respect for them is just enormous. And I wanted somebody to go through an experience in that world who came out with some sort of affirmation. And it wasn't easy, because I didn't want it to be fake. I didn't want it to be Pollyanna-ish. And I hope we've done it.
Well, clearly you've done that, because, I mean, the last scene, in a sense, confirms that. But I thought you'd say that you wanted to say something about corruption in our society, rather than an affirmation for the strength within of institutions that have been plagued by corruption.
I really wanted to deal with one's own role within it, one's role within a corrupt society, because that just doesn't apply to the police force. Listen, we all live that. And in fact, the ending that I was having terrible trouble with, I finally resolved by just checking my own career and what have I done within the studio movie system, which is hardly the purest thing down the pike. And
did you find moral choices you had to make?
All the time, daily. As I'm sure you do, Charlie. I mean, you must have been offered by now every network, every, you know, you name it. And you choose to stay with what you're doing because, and it is a choice. You're turning down money, you're turning down a certain kind of notoriety, and you're keeping yourself, for want of a better word, pure.
Well, free is the word.
Yeah.
It's the word.
Yeah. Well, same thing.
Yeah, no, it is. And with all that you can do, what was it that attracted you to the character? Give us a definition, a sense of how you saw it.
Well, obviously to work with Sidney. I mean, when he called, I was a fan for many years, and his movies had affected me tremendously. And when I first started to study acting, obviously his movies were at the forefront of the kind of things that I looked to and the kind of things I wanted to get involved in. That things were about some issues that were important and that made you think and can affect you in a certain way that has a resonance and a residual effect in your life. So that was the principal reason, because I hadn't read the material. I wasn't aware of the picture until Sidney called.
Did you say yes right away before he even...
I guess so. I mean, emotionally, yes, although I hadn't read the material. It's very hard to be useful to someone until you read the material and say, I really identify, you know, he could be doing something that I don't agree with, you know, and then I said, God, that was unlucky for me. But in this case, it was very easy to admire Sean Casey, who he was and what his struggles were, and it was very easy for me to identify with him and try to get behind him.
Just before we see a clip, in which is a conversation between he and his father, I think, tell me who he is for the benefit of the audience. Who is Sean Casey, the character you play, you know, and what is he going through in this film?
Well, I think he starts, you know, he's basically a gentleman my age, maybe a little younger, who has been a street cop for most of his career, and he's been studying to be a lawyer at night, and he finally got that degree, and he switched over into the ADA pool in the city of New York. And I think from a metaphoric standpoint, he's a character who has tremendously high ideals and very pure in nature, and it's really how sort of his journey, how corruption sort of enters into his skeleton, and how he deals with that and the kind of choices he has to make that compromise his entire fabric of who he is. And not only who he is, but the sort of example that's been laid down by his father and he has to do this in a way to protect the one person that he most cherishes and who set that example for him.
His father.
His father. So
tell me about his father, played by Ian Holm.
By Ian Holm, a remarkable actor. And the father's a straight New York cop, and an honest one. And he himself has never gotten caught in that web. He knows about it, of course, because you can't be a cop and not know about it. But he's kept himself straight. And there's this one tiny little flaw, and sure enough, that's the one that comes up and almost sinks him and almost sinks Andy.
Here is the relationship between these two people. Roll tape.
I'm clean. Why'd you lie at the trial? Joey's already told you. Joey told you about our meeting? Of course.
Man, that's good. How many takes? Yeah.
Second take.
2 takes on that?
2 takes, yeah.
And you knew it to say, you didn't want to go
let's go
10
home.
to think you could find something else.
No. When it's there, leave it alone, you know?
Yeah. And as an actor, tell me a little bit about approaching a scene like that. I mean, what?
Well, we rehearse it, the movie like a play very intensely for 2 weeks, and we run through it twice a day, and therefore that's why most of the movie is done in 1 or 2 takes, because we all sort of had a very clear idea what we were searching for in every scene, and we had talked about it a lot. But, you know, you sort of try to empower the stakes of the scene, and, you know, when you have a situation like Sean Casey and his father, he puts in the highest of arenas, you know, it's like a cherished ground for him. And for him to believe that his father might be incorporated himself in something that shatters everything that he's ever stood for in his own son's life, that's pretty heavy stuff, you know, especially when you empower Sean as someone who really cares about those things. So his frustration level at this point has been building in the movie, where he just can't sit on it anymore, you know.
Yeah. Have you ever had this kind of conflict, not in terms of a corruption in your family, but I was thinking as I watched this film how lucky I'd been that I had never had to face that kind of enormously difficult moral crisis.
Well, I think, you know, as an actor, we've all been, you know, in the ways we've studied the craft and so forth, is you try to personalize things in your own life and find parallels that you can relate to that are similar to those in the script or in the objectives and the obstacles of the character. And you'd be surprised how many things that you have in your life, if you really start thinking about it, that relate to things that you right now are in sort of denial about.
Yeah,
But
I'm sure you have, Charlie. Haven't
Well,
you?
I don't know. It just seems
if you looked at
instinctive. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I think if you go back and you look at it, you know, you sort of really soul search and go into that kind of work, which you do as an actor. One day you go, oh.
Yeah.
So those are the things you sort of try to draw.
I know you're right, Sidney, because I mean, I defer to it. But in a sense, I mean, this was a powerful choice. I mean, because of the relationship and his father and what he might, not knowing exactly what he was going to find, but knowing in the end probably what he would do.
You know, we ran into that same kind of thing, that same kind of choice in The Blacklist.
That's what I'm sure, and that's what I thought about when you were saying choice.
Right, because there may not have been father or brother, but it was best friends.
Colleague.
It was people that you'd worked with all your life,
Yeah.
and you know, that's a family too. The people that you worked with become a family.
Sure.
Yeah. Walking out of this film, in these magnificent scenes between father and son, why? And Richard Dreyfuss plays. We should give credit to Richard Dreyfuss plays a wonderful lawyer, defense attorney.
Sort of based on William Kunstler, by the way.
I figured that. Yeah. Now, was the actual story is based on a real life story of what?
Yeah,
because it's written by Robert Daly, who worked within the police department.
Both the book and the picture, Charlie, begin with what was a real incident. There was a really Harlem's largest dope dealer, a man by the name of Larry Davis.
Right.
And there was a raid, much like the raid you saw in the movie, and he took out 5 cops and escaped and turned himself in 48 hours later to Kunstler. And Kunstler's defense was that it was self-defense on his part because they were coming up there to execute him, that they'd been partners in dope for any number of years, and that the cops were now raising the ante, and he didn't want to pay it. And so the cops were going to take him out. And He's in jail now, but I think that's on many, many other charges. I think, if I'm correct, on the murder charge, I think he got off.
Yeah, I think he did too. I don't remember. But I thought that was based on that story as I was watching the film. Here's what I missed in the film, sir. Telling Sidney Lumet what he didn't do.
Be my guest. A lot of less qualified people than you have, Joe.
I never knew you went from this enormously dramatic event of the cops coming in from 3 separate precincts, dramatic event with the character,
right?
And he escapes. We never know how and why he ends up at a press conference for with Richard Dreyfuss playing the character he does.
That's the lawyer he turned himself into.
I know that.
Right.
But shouldn't there have been, from a director's standpoint,
right.
This is very dangerous ground, shouldn't there have been something to suggest why he turned himself in? Because people who escape from a shootout, having murdered 3 cops,
right,
knows that he's in deep trouble. Did he do it because he realized he'd be on the lam for the rest of his life and they'd get him in the end because they were going to hunt him down and kill him? Or did he do it for some other reason, and shouldn't we have had a scene to explain that?
I don't think so. You know, I think that's the kind of shorthand that you're allowed in movies. It seemed to me perfectly obvious that if that his life wasn't worth a plug nickel, not only from pursuit of the cops, but any street punk would want to take him out just to get on the good side of the cops. Yeah. So there'd be nobody he could trust. He couldn't trust anybody he knew. He couldn't trust the street, and God knows he couldn't trust the cops. So there was no alternative for him.
And so it's implicit that that's why he did it.
It seemed to me, you know, Charlie, making movies, you always have to make assumptions about the kind of shorthand you want to use.
Yeah.
Because
you only have an hour and a half or 2 hours to tell. In this case, about 2 hours.
Right.
Yeah. So you make decisions. Any other important decisions you made in this film in terms of the shorthand you felt like that the story carries it?
Yeah, and I don't know that it's completely successful either. I wanted very much for Andy's character, for Sean Casey, to be exposed to a whole new life, not just in his political life, not just in his work by being an ADA and eventually DA, but even in terms of the love life. And so that Lena's character, Lena Olin's character, I wanted somebody older. And people are so surprised. They keep coming to me and they say, hey, she looks older than Andy. That's
yeah,
right.
I thought that too at the time.
She's supposed to be older than Andy.
But she was still good looking. I had no problem understanding why.
Foreign,
yeah.
richer,
yeah.
More sophisticated. That he just gets, she certainly isn't the Queen's girl next door. And I just wanted him exposed.
So you want him to see that life so that, that he would have an appreciation
just
or
so that,
temptation of...
Again, the choices are going to be present for him. It's something he can reject or go with. It's something that he immediately decides to go with because his heart is telling him and everything else is telling him.
You want, Andy, people to come out of this film saying what? Other than having a good 2 hours of entertainment that made the experience of being there satisfying.
Right. Well, you know, I think there's the resonance of to know that in life that there are consequences when you cross the line, and when certain decisions are made, and you have to be prepared to take ramifications of those decisions, and shortcuts might not always get you there. And for children, I think that's a valuable lesson. It's a thinking man's movie. It's not, or a woman. It's not a situation where everything's going to be laid out to you, but you're going to go through an honest journey, and there's very little acting in the movie. There's a lot of reality, but there's very little acting.
Meaning what?
Well, I think everyone Sidney chose an ensemble that are very true to their work, and they compel you to watch because they're giving you honest delivery of, they're sort of opening up their inner life to you in their characters. And I always find that to be very attractive when an actor puts himself on the line that way. And to me, those are the kind of movies that, to me, I think about afterwards and that I remember. It's usually because of the kind of work, and Sidney's made most of them.
Yeah.
The people who sort of make that kind of commitment to the material.
I wanted something in addition to that, Charlie, too. You know, we're not in control of the result. We don't know what the result is going to be, ever. The only thing we are in control of is our own behavior.
Yes.
And for want of a better word, it's very nice when it at least struggles for its own purity and for its own sense of what you began with, what you wanted out of life. I'm a great believer in adolescence that way. You know, an awful lot of good stuff comes out there.
You're in your 70s. Do you love it as much as you did when you began?
I think more so, because I'm learning it finally. You know, it just does take time. Just the stuff you can throw out, that's really what you do, I think. You know, if your work is going to get better, I think you get rid of stuff. Yeah. I don't shoot fancily. I don't make it one of those visual pyrotechnical displays. I think that's all nonsense. And just to go simply and tell the truth.
But do you worry a little bit, speaking of visual, there's a new movie out called Fifth Element, I think, which will probably be very successful, developed by Luc Besson, and starring Bruce Willis and others. And that's way into the world of pyrotechnics and all of that. On the other hand, we have seen very small focus films get a lot of attention. Sling Blade 1.
Right.
Is that where we're going? It's either going to be this, or does your movie represent sort of somewhere in between in terms of being a Hollywood-financed film?
I genuinely don't know, Charlie. I worry. Because, you know, they have... These people who run these studios are not fools. They can show you that they are better off doing a $100 million movie and focusing all attention on that than they are doing $10 million movies. The results are better financially. So that starts dealing with the audience right away and what taste has become. So I don't know. I may be a fossil. I may outgrow it.
How do you, Andy, see what you want to do? I mean, do you think of, when you look at sort of where you are in terms of an ascendant career, doing well, you know, how do you want to choose? What do you want to do?
I sort of try to leave myself available for things that truly affect me and that I can get behind. I don't have any real designs of the type of materials that I'm searching for. I like the spontaneity of someone saying, take a look at the script, it's terrific, you know. I do choose from things that come in, and very few things affect me. And so I have things of my own that I would like, stories I'd like to tell, but in terms of what other people bring or are working on out there, it's I just stay available to something to hit me, you know.
I want to come back to the notion of because I think there are a couple of films you want to make which you haven't talked about before, which I've read a little bit about. Roll tape. Here's another scene from Night Falls on Manhattan.
Sean, first rule of the drug world: there can't be that much money around without dirty cops. That's what I wanted to get to.
Now, as a movie goer and as someone who loves dialogue, I want to see more of that kind of dialogue where people genuinely, maybe it's because of what I do.
Of course.
Really powerful ideas, revelation, personal,
and surprises.
And surprises,
And we were making those movies 15, 20 years ago, a lot of them, more so than they are today, and so it becomes for an actor a lot more difficult to choose from. We have in the movie emotional pyrotechnics.
Yes, exactly.
And that takes good writing, and it's very hard to find people who are actually writing. They're writing action sequences or that kind of thing, but they're not writing. You know, the movies, American films, used to come out of men of literature, men of the theater.
Yeah, William Faulkner was writing screenplays.
Oh, absolutely.
And so was Scott Fitzgerald, and so was Gore Vidal, and so
I believe there's a hunger for that kind of movie to out there. I'm noticing it with this picture. I mean, we've been very fortunate to get a lot of attention for the movie already, and I find it interesting that people are thankful for movies that stimulate their intelligence.
How are you, if you can argue this is embarrassing, but I'll do it anyway, a different actor because you spent a movie with Sidney Lumet? How are you different, if you can? Does it reinforce instincts in you? Does it what?
Sure. Well, I mean, Sidney works like if you were doing a play, which is very rare. I mean, to rehearse a play is very beneficial and not uncommon, but to rehearse a film is very uncommon. And
why would it be so uncommon?
They don't find the importance. They don't take the time. It costs money to bring actors in for 2 weeks before you start and rehearse it. So to go through the process with Sidney, who's known as to be an actor's director, to me is one of the great joys. And just watching him work, the efficiency in which he presents his camera, how he's not worried about holding moments in movies that most normally would be on a cutting room floor. Not necessarily sometimes because the director wouldn't want it, but the studio and everybody else would tell them, no,
speed it up.
Speed it up. And that's a rare thing to find, that someone can empower the moments and leave them in, because once you cut away from a moment like that, even though you come back to it, it's lost its power. Yeah. Because you release the grip on the audience.
You know, it's interesting, too, Andy, having been so nice, I'm going to be nice back. Andy, make believe you're not here.
Okay.
We'll talk about you. I get that question all the time about why did you cast Andy Garcia in this part, you know, especially as an Irishman. All that sort of ethnic nonsense comes into it, too. And when I met Andy, we've seen each other at parties, and you know I talk like a sailor.
Yeah.
And when I met Andy, we had about 2 hours together the first time we met. And I noticed over that entire time, I didn't hear a goddamn, I didn't hear a Jesus Christ, I didn't hear one curse word. And because I like to accommodate actors, I pointed that out to Andy, and I said, Andy, you know, I've heard a curseless language from you, and if that's what you need, I'll adjust to it. You know, it'll inhibit me a little at the beginning, but I'll get used to it. Are you a religious man? And Andy said, yes, I am. And it was something that I had sensed about Andy, because what I needed, clearly, in this movie was a sense of purity, that you could believe it when that piece of exposition comes out that he studied for the priesthood, that you'd believe that. And you could believe that about Andy. This is in addition to him being one of the best actors of his generation, maybe the best. But that purity, that's nothing that any director can give an actor, you know. Yeah. That's either there or it isn't.
When you worked with Pacino, I mean, the list of people you've worked with, beginning with 12 Angry Men and Fonda, I don't know if that was beginning, but that was way back when.
Right?
Yeah. What do you look for actor? What do you look for?
Talent. Start with that. And
is that hard to find?
Not as hard as you'd think. We're blessed in this country.
I would think so.
Almost all of our stars are magnificent actors. An awful lot of them. A much higher percentage, I think, than any other country. Then, Charlie, you get into that search for every star, certainly. Is some kind of combination. It seems to me of three things. Their talent. Start with that. Good actors. And when I talk about actors, I'm talking about actresses as well. Then something in the persona that seems to coincide with the part. And also, since really good acting is always self-revelation, something about the truth of that person is going to come out if I've done my job right and they're doing their job right. So that what they are as just as a human being, those three things are something that matter a great deal to me when I'm casting.
There's a subconscious that you're attracted to in material, or whether you're writing the material or as an actor, when you read it, you go, I really must be in this or play this part. And you quite don't know why it affected you. But as you start peeling the onion, you start, sometimes it comes very early on before you start the part, and sometimes you're halfway through and you go, oh my goodness, that's why.
And for instance, the kind of thing I mean is
it's
just
a subconscious relationship.
Give you a specific. Ian Holm, whom I've known for 30 years, wonderful, wonderful actor, and I never worry about British actors and accents because they're so trained, they're so beautifully equipped technically that almost always they can get whatever accent is needed. And Ian was going back to London. He had literally just finished shooting, I guess it was Stanley Tucci's movie. What was
The Big Night.
The Big Night. Right. And he called, he said, Sidney, can I pop by for a minute? And I said, yeah, come on by, Ian. He was on his way to the airport. And he came in, he's shorter or about the same height I am. Bandy legs, in shorts, it was hot, perspiring, and said, and Andy was in the office. He had dropped by, we were talking about a couple of things. And I said, Andy, this is Ian. And I disappeared from the conversation. The two of them locked into each other with a kind of connection that I've seen so rarely. And literally, this is the absolute truth, as Ian walked out of the office, I hadn't sent him the script yet, I hadn't offered anything to him. As he was going out of the office, I said, Ian, what are you doing in September? He said, I don't think I'm doing anything. I said, yes, you are. And it just came out of the intense personal connection with Andy, and it shows on the screen, I think.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Charlie.
Night Falls on Manhattan, Sidney Lumet's latest film, starring Andy Garcia. Great to meet you.
Likewise.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Stay with us.